Hello and welcome back to the All Out Brits Podcast, the podcast that sends the house on all things NFL from across the seas here in sunny old England. Now, we had a very, very exciting week. We had more criminal offences committed in the NFL than we had touchdowns by the Steelers, and we had more money thrown at big, scary men than at a woman's hen do. So I tell you what, you know that it was a good old week. And as always, to talk about all the joys that went on is the main man, Mr. Elliot Greenwood. Elliot, how you doing, my friend? It's good to see you again.
It's good to be back, bro, and what a week it was this week. It's fantastic that the NFL's come back. I've missed it. We've both missed it. Red Zone, Sundays just were not the same without it. And again, a record-breaking week, 19 field goals, over 50 yards. That's the most in NFL history for one single game week. And yeah, it was a special team bonanza really this week. What did you think of the new kickoff rule? This is what I was going to ask you as well.
I quite like this, to be fair. At first, I saw it in the preseason. I was like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think some teams from the start boot it straight out for a touchback. But now you're starting to see some drop it in this landing zone. I think as we go on throughout the season, we'll find people that will have these little special plays. And it's a little added extra bonus, I think, for teams. What about yourself? What do you think about that?
I enjoyed it a lot. It puts a bit more power back to the returners and back to kind of that explode. What do we all love in the NFL? We love big-time plays, and big-time plays are made on special teams. So hopefully we get to see a lot more big plays from big players.
Well, let's get straight into it then. And let's start with the games where there wasn't too many big plays and they were a bit crap. And let's get it started. First of all, there was a team that we thought were going to be absolutely awful. And you know what? They didn't disappoint, and that was the Carolina Panthers. What do you even begin to start and talk about when it comes to the Panthers? Where's it going wrong? Who do you point the finger at? Why are they absolutely dog-turd?
I don't think it's a question of where they're going wrong. It's where are they going right at all. Nothing about that game looked confident. Bryce Young still looked like a rookie. He looked poor. He looked poor in the pocket. He was inaccurate with his throws, and the pocket wasn't kept clean for him either. Again, the same issues as last year. No receivers downfield. Pocket wasn't kept clean. He's a small quarterback that can't see over his offensive line. I think we're going to see more of the same from the Carolina Panthers this season. What did you think of them? And was there any other performances, Taz, that kind of stood out to you?
Well, I mean, throwing a pick straight out the gate is not what you want in
back-to-back years as well, bro.
Embarrassing. I don't know if it's a curse of the number one pick. I don't know what it is, but I do feel for the lad. I feel for the franchise, but they are looking absolutely awful. And if you're a Panthers fan, you might as well just call it a day here and watch something else like cricket. But another game that was pretty bad, but also kind of good, was the Steelers and the Falcons game. Now, we talked about, the Falcons looking like they could be a proper good team this year. Kirk Cousins going over there. Same with the Steelers, having two new quarterbacks. We thought this would be a high-scoring shootout, and you got some Muppets that can't get it into the end zone. What on earth went on over there?
Well, I think it was the game for TJ Watt. It was absolutely brilliant what that Pittsburgh Steelers team were able to do on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they just got it done. They just got the ball into the areas where they hoped and prayed that Chris Boswell would kick it through the post. And obviously 18 points for their kicker. One thing I would say, though, on the Atlanta side, they could not keep the pocket clean for Kirk Cousins. He's coming to a team, he's an old quarterback coming off an injury, and they have to keep the pocket clean. Because of TJ Watt, they'll manage to get pressure on the quarterback in over 40% of these dropbacks. That's not good enough. They need to find a way to protect the quarterback, otherwise they're just going to continue to lose football games.
Yeah, and I don't think Kirk Cousins will be liking that. And something else that we don't like as NFL fans is seeing the Patriots win. And that is what we saw in probably one of the craziest upsets and shocks of the week one in the NFL. What on earth is going on in Cincinnati? Last year, Joe Burrow hurts himself, goes down. We thought he was pretty much done. There was talks that he was never going to be the same quarterback. Maybe those talks were right. There's been issues with Jamar Chase over the offseason. He comes and plays, but couldn't produce very much at all. What was it then? Was it the offense, was it the defense, or the Patriots actually quite good?
Well, at the start of the day, I went on Sky Bet and I had a look at what the odds were for the Patriots to lose the game, because that's what we all thought was going to happen. Yeah. And for the Bengals to win, the odds were 1-7. So if you put a pound on, you're getting 17p profit back. It was basically written in the stars that the Patriots were going to lose that game. But what they actually did was they just played a clean game of football.
Yeah.
And they didn't do anything fancy. They didn't do anything special. They just kept the ball and they completed the drives. And again, nothing fancy. Jacoby Brissett at QB didn't do anything special, but they just played clean. On the flip side of that, the Bengals' loss was ultimately, for me, it was just self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah.
They had 2 fumbles and a handful of drop passes.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, they didn't throw the ball deep at all. They only throw the ball past the sticks on 30% of passes. And for Joe Burrow, that's just not good enough. If you want to be an elite quarterback, you got to be able to command the field, and he just did not do that this week. What did you think of Joe Burrow's performance, and where did Cincinnati go from here?
I mean, I think they're in a lot of trouble. I know, like we just mentioned, there was some talk about his injuries and everything like that. But he doesn't look like the same quarterback. Even with the bleach blonde Gaza hair, he don't look right whatsoever. He's come looking more like Phil Foden, and he looks absolutely awful in both aspects. Even with his legs, he couldn't really produce much with that, which is what we've known, Joe Burrow to do. But like you said, the cleanest teams are the ones that win the games, and I think that's what we saw mostly this week. Normally, you can have a few interceptions, a few fumbles, and get away with it. But week 1 of the NFL, you want a clean game, and you come out with a good result, and that's what we ended up seeing pretty much. So overall, what did you make then of the first start to the season for these absolutely stinking teams?
Well, again, like you say, it was a bit stinky. Do you know what I mean? It was a bit stinky, especially for Burrow. He's come dressing like he's Eminem, but it was more shady than slim. It just was, for me, I think it was very much this is week 1 in the NFL.
Yeah.
There's a lot of development that needs to happen in Cincinnati, but
100%.
2 quarterbacks which I think we're both going to enjoy see develop over the course of the season. They faced up in week 1, and that was the quarterback from the Indianapolis Colts in Anthony Richardson and the quarterback from the Houston Texans in CJ Stroud. What a matchup, Taron. 2 points swing to win the game in favour of the Texans. What did you make of that, and who kind of stood out to you in that game?
Well, first of all, we know that there's one man who plays for the Texans who we love quite a bit, and we've got to play it.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Mr. CJ Stroud.
Unbelievable,
He's back
man.
again. He's done it again. Unbelievable quarterback. He's got help over the offseason. Again, I don't know what is going on in Houston, but they are cooking some serious crack. And whatever they are smoking over there as well, it's doing some pretty good stuff for him. Diggs coming over there. A big addition. People said he was cooked, said he wasn't going to do much, but he comes in, catches a few touchdowns, and starts pretty well. On the flip side of it, we were talking off air about Anthony Richardson. Only made 9 passes, completed 9 passes.
One of them, however, though, Taron, was the best throw that we'll ever see this season. Talk about that 60-yard touchdown pass.
It's unbelievable. But again, we don't see enough quarterbacks do this. And yet this guy's come in off a heavy injury last year, which is what we need to remember. Didn't really play too much last year. And he's come back in with his spot and he's absolutely let his arm fly. What do you make of this sort of long ball tactic? And we see it in a lot of other sports. But in the NFL, to use that as your route one is pretty interesting, I think.
Well, to only complete the 9 passes in a game. And again, it really is. It's more of a rookie season for him. He only played a handful of games last season. It is exciting. It is fantastic to see. And when he was doing it well, it looked fantastic. We were enjoying the game. He looked like a fantastic quarterback. But 5-yard passes win games, little slants inside, little dig routes to the outside, just keeping it in the sticks, turning down, not turning down first downs and turning down the big plays when sometimes you just need to keep the drive rolling. That's what wins football games. And that's what Houston were able to do. They leaned on their running game, and Joe Mixon looked absolutely unbelievable on the ground. 213 total yards on the ground, rushing for the entire team, and 159 of those belonged to Joe Mixon. I was very, very speculative about that decision to kind of bring him in. I thought he had a poor season for the Bengals last year, but week 1, he's absolutely shown out in Houston. And what did you think of that game in Taron?
I mean, again, it's always what you want to see is players playing a bit stinky, but then coming back to their absolute best. And I think that's what we saw. Another point that I found quite interesting is, do you think that teams were sort of testing out plays? It's week 1, the playbook, you're probably still refining it. I know preseason is obviously the main time you test out these plays, but it felt like a lot of teams were trying crazy stuff. to seeing if it pulled off, especially with this new kickoff rule and things like that. And I mean, I don't know if in the Colts game, same with Richardson, playing deep balls most games. I don't know if he trusted the fact that he could get the slants going later on in the season. But what do you reckon? Testing out plays or just can't get things going?
I think week 1 is just about getting the job done. As you move on through the season, that's where you find your identity. You find if you're running the ball, you find if you're more of a pass-heavy team. The first 6 weeks of the season are just learning about your team, learning about your division, and learning and reading the tape of the teams that you're about to play. Like I said, just get the job done, because you can't win the season in the first 6 games, but you can certainly lose it.
100%. And you mentioned as well a running back who had a bit of a stinking season last year, but is now back to their best. And another one is a man that has been traded over to the Eagles and had a pretty good game out in Brazil. Now, Brazil, what a crazy, crazy place to have an NFL game. I can't think of many crazy places apart from maybe in Birmingham or something like that. But Brazil, they talked about the fact that if they wore green, it was going to kick off, and they wore green. So you know what? Fairs to the Packers. But I think you had a few strong words to say about the Brazil game and everything that went on there.
Mate, that turf was dodgy. It was really, really poor. I saw someone analysing the turf, and I think you need to get a hobby if your job is to analyse the turf, bro. Like, come on, you need to get a job. But I thought the game itself was a good advert for football abroad. 2 fantastic teams looking ahead to a season where really they're both going to be pushing deep into the playoffs. And you mentioned one of those talents, one of the talismans on the offensive side of the ball in Saquon. But for me, the reason why the Eagles were able to get the job done was because of the receivers that they got on the outside, and A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Those 2 combined for 203 yards in total and a touchdown on 12 catches, with 10 of those catches being converted to first downs. And that's what wins the game. It's first downs. On the flip side of that, the Packers just weren't able to air the ball out as well as kind of we've seen previously. Jordan Love was only able to complete 50% of his passes. He was 27% on third down, and he was only completing 25% of his red zone drives. That is not good enough for a playoff team. And Jordan Love, missing 3 to 6 weeks now. How do you think the Packers are going to recover from this loss, especially without the star man?
Again, it's a very difficult thing. Like you said, you want to get through week 1 with a result, but also you want to get away unscathed. And you mentioned Jordan Love was your star man, your MVP for this year.
I've still got him.
Okay. Well, he's going to need to do a lot more than, sit there resting his legs off or whatever's wrong with him. But yeah, no, I think 100% it's very tough for the Packers now without their star quarterback. But they've got talent. And if they can get, that sort of running again, if they can, work it well enough, I think they'll be okay. And I think they'll perform as well, but not as well as they can with Jordan Love. But for the Eagles, I was very concerned for them in the offseason because they were absolutely awful towards the back end of last year. They seemed to run out of steam. It just seemed like they were all kicking off with each other. The toys were out the pram. Jason Kelsey left and it looked like everything was going to fall apart. But you know what? They've come back strong. They've changed how they're being coordinated. And you know what? I thought they played a pretty good game. And I think it'll be interesting to see how the Eagles' offense goes forward.
Well, interestingly, you should say that. I've heard rumours, I've heard little murmurings that Nick Sirianni, the head coach, does not get on with his quarterback. And the quarterback, Jalen Hurts, does not get on with him. And the key to having an identity as a team is your quarterback and your head coach have got to be on the same page. And when you look at the team that are lost against, and even a team in the division, in the Cowboys, having Dak and the entire franchise are behind him now, that propels confidence in the team. If your head coach doesn't back you, I don't back you for the season. I don't think the Eagles make the playoffs this year.
It's a big shout. It's a big shout. And of course, he has to bring it back to Dak because they're self-obsessed at the very least.
Well, when it's a man that's getting 60, the highest paid quarterback in NFL history, bro, and in true Jerry Jones fashion, Tom Brady commentating on the game, he's got to one up everything, paying his quarterback big bucks, 4-year contract, 4 more years for number 4. What do you think about that deal, bro? I really like it. I love that Prescott.
I bet you do. I mean, I have never, ever rated Dak Prescott as a quarterback. I think he's a pretty boy who just sits there and he cannot deliver when he needs to.
You're just a hater, bro. You're just a hater.
I am a hater. I'm glad you know that. He's absolutely awful, paying him all this money. There was talks that he was going to reset the quarterback market. Yeah, he will, because I've never seen a contract this bad to someone as bad as him since Deshaun Watson, and that's saying something to me.
Do you know why I think it's bad for more from the 49ers point of view though, bro? Is if you think that Brock Purdy's better than Dak Prescott, you got to pay $65 million a year.
Yeah, exactly, mate. That's why I'm not very happy about this. God, we ain't got that much money. Do you not see the chaos here?
Well, shall we look ahead, though, to the 49ers matchup next week? Because they're facing the Minnesota Vikings. How do you feel about that game? In a game which Sam Darnold, is it his revenge arc? Is it his revenge story? He had a fantastic game last week, completing 19 of 24 passes, getting the ball to JJ. What are you thinking? Is it Sam Darnold's time over Brock Purdy?
Forget that. He didn't have his time when he was in San Francisco, so let alone being in Minnesota. But you know what? I was, like people might have seen on the TikTok, stayed up to watch our first game. I was a bit concerned very early on, to say the very least. We had a bit of a stinking start. Defense stood up well, but Brock Purdy couldn't get his arm going. Eventually, he did. And I tell you what, who needs CMC? I know someone on this podcast needs him. I know you need him.
Are you drafting
first overall? We'll get to that. But clearly, this system, Brock Purdy is a system quarterback, and this system works so well. If you can stick undrafted rookies into the system and they perform as well as Mr. Jordan Mason did, unbelievable. I mean, Debo again had a very heavy workload. Ayuk didn't really. And I think looking forward to the Vikings game, like you said, I think we can see it being amped up a little bit more. This Niners team looks scary, and I think it's going to be a very tough game against the Vikings. The Vikings, again, absolutely dispatched the Giants, and the Giants, they aren't worth mentioning. And the only thing worth mentioning is Kay Adams. Give your head a wobble, love, because Daniel Jones, get him gone.
I don't know if those are true reports. I just found that online. I don't know if those are true reports, but if they are, then that is something that needs addressing, because she's a gal. No. And Daniel Jones is not going to be a quarterback in this league for much longer. He will be sat on the sideline chatting to her more than he will be throwing ball. Two quarterbacks, though, that did impress me last week, and who I hope will impress me in the week coming up. Coming off losses, though, Cardinals versus the Rams, bro. Kyler Murray and Matt Stafford. What are you thinking about those two quarterbacks, and what do they need to do to get the win over each other this week?
Again, I think it's been a very interesting one. I think Kyler Murray used his legs unbelievably well. I think he had a few chances where he could use his legs and opted to throw and, miss downs and things like that. But Kyler Murray looks back to his absolute best. I think the big thing that missed out was all the hype of Marvin Harrison Jr. Didn't really get a touch of the ball. Trey McBride.
Tell me about it. Again, he got me 1 point. He got me 1 point.
Absolutely awful. And I think looking forward, they need to be involved. But on the flip side of it, Puka Nacua out, looking like he's going to be missing out. But Cooper Kupp looks back to being Matt Stafford's man on these quick little slants and these short routes. You know what? Absolutely love it. And I think it's going to be an absolute matchup, divisional game. Very, very interesting. But overall, I think the Rams are going to clear them pretty easily.
Well, you mentioned Cooper Kupp. The toe-tipping drag swag was on display. He looked back to, like you say, his elite best. 14 catches for him and a touchdown, 110 yards. He looked electric.
That's my boy.
I did like the Arizona Cardinals. In that first half against the Bills, Kyler Murray, like you say, was electric. He completed 13 of 16 for 130 yards and a touchdown. He looked like he was a quarterback and a half. He was moving the ball, getting his pieces involved, getting the ball to Trey McBride. I would like to see him get the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. a little bit more, especially considering I'm thinking about starting next week in fantasy. So get the ball to the number 3 overall pick. But yeah, for me, I think if Kyler can produce what he did in the first half against the Bills over 2 halves next week, I think the Arizona Cardinals walk away with a victory there.
Well, you mentioned the Bills, a team that I, again, thought were going to really struggle this season, somehow come away with a win in the first week. And they go again, but against the Dolphins, another team that kind of started a little bit slow, but somehow got the result, a bit like the Bills did. But what about this one? Again, the Bills just don't look like they have everything going. Allen looks like a man that's going to have to put everything on his shoulders and carry his team. I, first of all, don't know how they've convinced him to remain happy in Buffalo. Unless they're promising to get him so much help next offseason, there's no way he's going to be content with his number 1 target being taken away, his number 2 target being taken away. What on earth is going on in Buffalo for that to be the case going into this season?
When your back's against the wall, when you've got no help, when you've got a pocket collapsing, when you've got 70,000 fans screaming in the snow, in the wind, in the rain. There's only one quarterback that I trust, and that's Josh Allen. He's the only quarterback that can do what he does in that team. I think if you put Pat Mahomes in that team, it doesn't work. Joe Burrow in that team, it doesn't work. Lamar Jackson in that team, it doesn't work. It only works with Josh Allen, and he's a fantastic quarterback, and he showed that in the second half last week. On the flip side of that, another team that had a fantastic second half and a poor first half, the Miami Dolphins. Tua, I don't think he's anywhere near that of Josh Allen, but what he does have is those talents around him. Jalen Waddle and, of course, Tyreek, baby, on the edge. Yeah. I think those players are going to have a massive, massive swing on what happens in this game. So for me, unfortunately for Bills fans, I think the Dolphins are going to take the win. Who do you see getting the win in that matchup this week, bro?
Again, I think the big point that we've missed out on talking about is Tyreek Hill getting locked up. As long as he doesn't get locked up, how crazy is that, though? I saw the video earlier. I don't know what it is about him. He's got a lot of crazy stuff going on as Tyreek Hill. But to be speeding, to have attitude, and then to be wondering why he's been pinned to the floor and detained. Yeah, very interesting, to say the very least. But celebration was absolutely on top. And if the Bills can't lock him up this week, I think the Dolphins are going to absolutely run through that Bills team.
That's it, mate. No cornerback has been able to lock him up like that police officer did. And that is why he's one of the most, if not the most electric wide receiver in the entirety of football. I can see him having another absolutely stellar season. And if Tua can get in the ball and find ways to get in the ball, the Dolphins are going to go far.
Yes, it's looking good. It's looking good. Now, we've talked about franchises doing well. We've talked about teams cohering and playing well together. Let's talk about two teams with two coaches returning. That one team's been running really well, and that's in our fantasy league. Show Me Your TDs is back for a second year, and it's been very interesting, to say the very least. First week, same as last year, it's me versus Mr. Greenwood here. Him leaning back says a lot about everything going on. Greenwood, tell us what went on, mate.
Well, it was...
Don't get too excited. That mic looks like it's having the time of its life there.
Went into the game. There was hope. There was dreams of what could be. Of maybe I could go one further than what I did last season. Maybe I could exploit the weaknesses that I saw in your team. Because obviously you had fantastic wide receivers with your dodgy dealings that you did in the draft. But I thought I had fantastic running backs and superior running backs. But when your number one overall pick decides, I'm not going to play. And you knew about it on Friday, and you didn't tell me about it until on Monday morning. What am I going to do? Well, I've got nothing. I lost by 60 points. I lost by 60 points. Do you know how many points that is? That is like 4 players. 60 points. But again, like I said, you've been waiting to use that, haven't you? You've been waiting to use that. But like I said to you, bro, you can't win fantasy week 1, but you can lose it. You can't. You cannot win your fantasy league week 1. It's a long season. I'm going to place you twice more. I was predicted 2 losses. I'm still predicted to win 13 games, bro. So I'm putting it behind me. And we go again. Congratulations to you, though, bro.
Thank you, mate.
First victory in probably about maybe like 7 matchups now.
Yeah,
you were really
wrong,
bad last season.
Not wrong.
You needed it. This is a long time coming.
Yeah.
What do you see in your players? What do you see in your picks? And who stood out for you?
I'm very happy. I think the dodgy trades to somehow get the second and the third pick was,
so
it's goated. It's goated, to say the very least. But to sit Saquon Barkley on the bench and still 60 points to someone says a lot about the quality of my team. I'm very happy with, Diggs, Evans, Cooper Kupp in the team. People would not believe that we're in a 6-man, I'll tell you that much. But you know what?
Right. You've said that. You've missed out CD Lamb and Tyreek as well that you've got. And
Don't worry. I was getting to them. We've got Devon H.A., we've got CD, and we've got Tyreek. I tell you what, we're on an onslaught. The forfeit this year has been a little bit undecided, but there's rumours of a night's stay in a haunted house. And I tell you what, the spirits ain't getting to me, boy, because we're going to be winning the Super Bowl, to say the very, very least.
That's very optimistic. You saw how your season went last year, bro. You've got some players though, I must say. You've got some players on your team. The only thing is that Saquon Barkley move, leaving him on the bench.
Yeah.
You gotta give your head a wobble for that. You could have 90 pointed me, bro. You could have 90 points swung that game.
Could have been a good start. But as long as no one gets locked up, we'll be okay. As long as no one gets any sexual batteries against them, we're all going to be okay. I think we've wrapped everything up there, so I think we might as well head over to the sideline, have a bit of a timeout, and talk off the cuff about everything going on in the NFL. So the sideline question this week, we mentioned Mr. Dak Prescott getting a ludicrous payday.
Lucrative, bro. Come on.
Struggling. Ludicrous payday. But we've seen some absolutely honking contracts handed out to players, handed out to quarterbacks especially. In your opinion, what do you think is the worst contract that's ever been handed out in the NFL?
Oh, changing up the sideline question right at the end, bro. I like it, keeping me on my toes. Yeah. For me, I think the worst contract ever handed out is undoubtedly Deshaun Watson for the Cleveland Browns. It just hasn't worked for him ever since he's put on a Browns uniform. On the flip side of that, Baker Mayfield in Tampa, selected first overall by the Browns, now playing like a first overall pick. You couldn't write it. It's the most Cleveland thing ever. But there's still years left on that Deshaun contract, and he's been guaranteed a lot of money. And they gave up a lot for him. 3 first-round picks that have turned into unbelievable talents. You look at CJ Stroud. I think the Browns have messed up massively with that contract. I don't know what you think about that, bro. But is there any contract that you think is potentially worse, or what contract kind of stands out to you as one of the worst that you've seen in recent times?
Well, when you hire someone that can't keep his hands to himself, it's never going to go too well, especially when it's a quarterback. But I think as well, Russell Wilson again. The Broncos gave a lot for Russell Wilson, and it hasn't worked out whatsoever. They're still paying for him, and he's not even there anymore. And that is a horror contract for me. For him to still have money on it, and for them to still be paying, and he's they've left basically another NFL team to play $1 million, which is ridiculous. The Trey Lance trade, I mean, it's up there. It's up there to say the very, very least.
You didn't pay that much, though. That's the only thing. And you still
We just gave a lot away. Which is very, very devastating. But no, I'm going to stick with Russell Wilson. His contract is ridiculous, stupidly dumb. And so I really don't think he's going to get to any games in Steelers either.
These quarterback contracts, bro, are getting out of hand now. You look at the best quarterback in the league, Patrick Mahomes, is the 9th most paid player. Which is ridiculous. You've got Trevor Lawrence on more money and a handful of other quarterbacks on more money that couldn't even touch him at all. Where does it stop? What point does the NFL go, you can't pay your quarterback $100 million a year? Where's the line? What million are you saying it's going to stop?
I think at some point, it's getting ridiculous to a point now where every quarterback, every season is getting a stupid either extension or a big contract. I think it's kind of at a point now though where everyone's got a big contract almost. The big, quarterbacks have got them. Obviously, Brock Purdy.
Not Brock.
Exactly. He's probably the next one. Where it'll be very interesting to see how much he gets and how they figure his contract around to fit everyone in. But I think at a point the NFL will stop these guaranteed contracts and these 8-year contracts, almost like we're seeing, in the Premier League, for example, these long contracts. They will stop them because, teams who don't have as much money or as much sort of capital won't be able to put, $250 million over 8 years, whereas, some other franchises can. And that can be the make and break for a lot of different teams.
I couldn't agree more with you, mate. To be honest with you.
Wow, we agreed on something.
Yeah,
that's a gift, that is.
I just don't know what the line is because I'm thinking you got CJ Stroud who's going to get one paying in a couple of years. Anthony Richardson's going to want paying. Bryce Young's going to want a little bit of coin at some point as well, isn't he? 100%. But Brock Purdy's the next one. Yeah. If you can keep him under 50 mil, I think you've done well, to be honest with you, mate. But it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens. But yeah, one thing I will say, mate, what a podcast. We've done a great show.
What a podcast. And speaking of people that need some money, make sure you guys like, comment and subscribe to our podcast, our profile, because it's looking tight. Make sure...
We've got the merchandise, though. Let us know.
Merch. If you guys fancy some, just let us know as well. Make sure to follow us on TikTok. And when you're on there, enter the competition. The closing date will be in 2 days' time to win yourself a 24-25 player jersey. Go into our TikTok and find out what you got to do to win that. Elliot, what a wonderful, wonderful week. Have you got anything to add?
No, that's it, mate.
Good chat, mate. Good chat. We thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. And we'll see you next time when we bring the house on all things NFL on the All Out Brits podcast. See you.
Cheers, lads. See you later.